Which organisations and groups in your country support gender identity politics and which oppose it?
I would say that most feminist organizations kind of like put them a bit aside on the debate. They treat the things regarding gender identity a bit like human rights, and that they are persecuted people, because that's how it appears on the media here. And sometimes they suffer violence and prejudice. So they kind of like completely ignore the implications of the current demands of the transgender movement. And since the transgender movement has been piggybacking the gay movement, gay and lesbian movement, they kind of like put everything in the same bag. So they think, oh, I'm not homophobic, so I'm not also transphobic. So they really don't take many public positions. I would say that if you consider the organizations here, there are probably two that I know of. One that has already signed the Declaration of Sex-Based Rights, and a platform which is considering signing the declaration, from information I have, which is a platform of about 20 organizations. Else, I would say that they either ignore it or they're more into lib feminism, so they're not really supportive. Who is against it also is people from the right here, obviously, but that's problematic also because they have a vision of women's rights which is not favorable to women. Among young people, I would say that most activists are very much into queer stuff, so I'd say they are against.
Most of NGOs in Serbia were they have assembled around year 2000, is when we had a great change of government and of the system itself, because we were in some type of socialism before, and now we are living in neoliberal capitalism. So there was a lot of structural changes, and the NGOs were mostly financed by donors from USA, from Sweden, from UK, and these were both international organizations such as UN Women or UNDP, and there were also other organizations, for example, human rights organization from all over the world. And I have read that there's like just follow money flow. That's true. I mean, every organization is actually now meeting the donors' expectation in order to be sustainable. Now that we have, like, a lot of donors are now withdrawing, because we had civil wars in 90s, and most of the activism started during the civil wars. And then they were supporting the opposition against the government in the 90s. And so they continued to support financially all these organizations. And now those donors have their own agenda. And their own agenda is also supporting transgenderism largely. So there are also, like I said, the organizations that I have worked in have also applied radical feminism principles. However, they are now unable to speak publicly about it because they might lose their funds. And we don't have the ability in a society that is so economically weakened to find other funds. We are unable to do the let's say any type of fundraising otherwise, and this is causing a huge issue, because you have women who have no other income other than those they are earning in the organizations, and also there is no capacity to organize any type of, for example, the hotlines or anything else that is needed unless you have this donor support. So this was actually quite set the tone when it comes to transgender activism. So of course, UN Women are supporting it. All the major donors are supporting the agenda. And all the LGBT organizations, even those who are just lesbians organization, are also supporting the whole, and they've been quite open about it. There are a couple women's organizations which are the main and the strongest, most influential women's organization who are being silent about this issue. And the silence is actually disapproval, but they cannot speak openly about it again because this might jeopardize the funds. So women are being very tactic about it. I mean, I know all of this because I've been part of all these organizations, so I know what is the internal talks are. And so I understand that they are against it, but they are not promoting them, but they are not opposing them publicly either. And this became quite an issue so far. So the only organization that has been speaking publicly against trans laws and transgenderism is actually a Marxist organization that's been called Marx 21. And there are quite a few women from this particular organizations who are following this webinar as well, and I think it would be interesting to have one of them in the future as panelists. I think they have quite a lot of things to say, and so far that has been the situation right now. So although I know that the women's organization are not supporting, they cannot speak publicly about that. Academia is also being silent, which is unfortunate, because among the professors in academia, there are strong radical feminists, but I think they're also afraid that they might jeopardize their position, not only in academia, but also in a community. So they've been very careful about this. There are just a few of them who are willing to actually be more proactive about this. So they are only reacting to certain events, but I think that the overall answer of the feminist movement wasn't very effective on this issue so far.
A major established women's organizations all support gender identity politics, except two. These two are Incheon Women's Line and an anti-prostitution organization in Busan. Incheon organization co-hosted Sheila's lecture last year. And all the feminist scholars in academia support gender identity, unfortunately. And this year, the director of Busan organization expressed her gender critical opinions on Facebook, and she was heavily criticized by liberal feminists and queer activists. So she had to resign from her position as a representative of coalition of women's group in Busan. We are very angry about this incident. And within anti-prostitution movement, there are some survivors and activists who are gender critical, but they are silenced by other activists within their organizations. And we had emergence of big wave of online feminism in 2015, and most of them are radical. As I said earlier, they already had discussion on gender identity issues, and they concluded that transgenderism is another form of misogyny. And this stance against transgenderism is not much different from general female population, I believe, which is good. And another powerful force against transgenderism is Christians affiliated with right wing. Christians comprise approximately like 28% of our population. So they are big part of voters, and Buddhists and Catholics are usually relatively sympathetic towards transgenderism, but Christians are very vocal against this, the transgenderism, and they organize political campaigns against this practice. Because they are important groups of voters, politicians, even liberal politicians, are very careful about their expressing their opinion on this issue. And this year, a feminist political party called Women's Party was set up before the general election. Some senior feminist activists approached radical online feminists, and they together decided to create the party, Women's Party. And this party focused their campaign on the fight against violence against women issues. But this party hasn't publicly expressed their stance on transgenderism, even though there were several cases that was going on in South Korea, as I said earlier. But since majority of these party members are radical, I sincerely hope they start doing campaign on this issue sometime soon.